I know you gave us some perspective about what type of things may be impacted here. What more can you add to this situation here tonight?
Well, let's take a closer look at what we really got over here. When you're looking at where this main column of smoke is coming up, what you're noticing is the smoke keeps belching out, and from time to time we've been seeing some flames. That suggests that there is this carbon source, which is oil or petroleum or fuel, whatever it is, continues to burn. And because it's hot, it burns some of it, but not all of it, because there's so much of it. So this carbon, as you can see the flame shooting up, continues to burn, and that is very toxic smoke, no two ways about it. The problem with all of this is, and if you look off to the right just a little bit, the flare stack has started going off again. Again, that is a safety valve, and that is made specifically to burn off stuff. And when you see it burning in a clear form like this, not the smoke that was early, it suggests that a lot of this carbon has already been burned out of the system, or at least where that is. Now, the problem is, going back to the column of smoke, is very straightforward. When you cook a machinery like this and you keep cooking it and you keep cooking it, it plays all kinds of havoc with all kinds of other things. There are many, many pipes there. There are many, many electrical systems there. There are many, many pumping systems, all that stuff, and they are certainly heat resistant and they're protected from heat. But this is a cooking function that's going on here, and the more it cooks, the less control they really have. Now, it is true, they can, with their valves, reroute fuels to different parts of this thing, but apparently whatever is continuing to feed that fire is continuing to feed that fire with quite a bit of volume, because, as I say, the smoke continues to rise and we continue to see flames. And until they get that under control, you're really not going to be in a position where you really know what's going on and how much damage there has been. And as I say, if this thing, which processes, incidentally, 250,000 barrels of fuel a day, 250,000 barrels of fuel a day, 1,200 people work here. If this thing is down for any extended period of time, then what you got to do is think about the impact on California gas prices. California Air Resources Board gasoline is different than other gasoline, and while it's made in a few other places, most notably Texas and Finland, the prices have to go way high before that fuel comes in, and when they go that high, then you will start seeing a little bit of cessation of the fuel prices, but they have to get pretty high before that happens. That is the current situation right now. The smoke is still pouring out of there, suggesting that this is an uncontrolled spill that continues to burn. And again, off to the right, the flare stack suggests that whatever emergency is going on, it continues to be an emergency, because these flare stacks, generally speaking, don't go off for very long. They go off for a few minutes at most, a few seconds, and then you have a situation like this where it's just been going for a long, long period of time.
In a story you will see only on 2 tonight, KTVU consumer editor Tom Vacar, he has poured over the paperwork, and he joins us now with what he's learned.
Well, consider this. Since the fire happened, Bay Area gasoline prices have gone up 37 cents a gallon. That's a 20% faster rise than the nation as a whole. The only reasonable explanation is the fire here that should not have happened. The damage from this fire is so extensive, one very knowledgeable source tells me this refinery's crude oil unit will be at least 6 to 12 months in reconstruction, and that's once investigators turn it back over to Chevron. That virtually guarantees higher than necessary gas prices.
I think we're just sort of at the mercy. We just kind of pay what we need to pay. We have to get to work.
Honestly, it becomes so stressful that I just try not to pay too much attention to the rise in the gas prices.
Unfair and a hardship on most of us. It's unfortunate in terms of that these things still have to happen.
A fair question. Was Cal OSHA, Chevron's chief safety regulator, doing all it could to enforce refinery inspection standards?
These rules and regulations are what keeps us all safe.
Cal OSHA has consistently declined to do interviews with me ever since the refinery fire, but they could not decline to answer Public Records Act requests, namely, how many inspections they've done at Chevron.
We all need to be protected by it. I mean, that's their role.
Since 2005, Cal OSHA's records list 19 inspections. 5 were done in 2010, dropping to 3 last year, dropping to 0 this year until the fire.
Sounds like a little bit of neglect, but that would certainly be fuel for all those people who are suing.
I just think it's another loophole that these corporations are being given to escape from their financial and societal responsibility.
Cal OSHA continues its silence. We continue to push for more answers. Tom Vacar, KTVU, Channel 2 News.
In tonight's special report, we take a closer look at the Chevron refinery in Richmond and charges of complacency that emerged after that massive fire back in August. KTVU consumer editor Tom Vacar tamed pages of refinery inspection records and tells us what he learned about past complaints in a story you'll see only on 2.
Was Chevron's August fire an aberration or the culmination of a long series of events?
One of the things that led to the disaster is Chevron kept running the unit for 2 hours after that leak was discovered. It apparently didn't want to take it offline.
Greg Karras, senior scientist for the nonprofit advocacy group Communities for a Better Environment, says, look back at Chevron's other massive fire 5 years ago, also from a pipe in the same unit of the refinery.
This was a major fire. It was caused by corrosion from sulfur in the crude in a pipe. Sound familiar? And it was left in place for 20 years or more when it wasn't supposed to be.
I obtained Cal OSHA inspection records for 25 inspections, thousands of pages, mostly employee safety complaints going back 7 years. Since a well-respected independent petroleum engineer told me Chevron's the gold standard of refinery operations, we wanted to interview Chevron about 6 inspections. No interview, but a written general statement saying it cooperated with Cal OSHA on these inspections and encourages workers to identify or stop work on safety issues without fear of reprisal. To these specific issues, Chevron would not answer questions. A year ago, a ruptured tube caused another fire. Cal OSHA noted that engineers were surprised at the amount of corrosion. Operators said a 33% increase in high sulfur crude oil processed takes a toll on the equipment.
When Chevron went to higher sulfur, inherently more corrosive crude, workers started finding corrosion accelerating everywhere. It's not just the crude unit, but multiple parts of this refinery are being corroded from the inside out.
Wendy Carlson, Cal OSHA's regional director, says much of the inspections have to be done internally.
The refineries are responsible to review all of their elbows and piping systems. It's not our responsibility.
Cal OSHA noted that some workers say they won't go over the head of their supervisors for fear of reprisals. Again, something Chevron has long denied, saying it has an anonymous hotline and an ombudsman.
I know that refinery workers at Chevron and other refineries do fear retaliation.
Another case, from 2003 to 2008, despite the company's own inspections, OSHA said Chevron failed to repair a corroded leaking pipe carrying cancer-causing tetraethyl lead.
They left that line, a pipe, standing in water for years. They were warned about it. They had a leak. They were told to fix it. They ran this toxic pipeline to failure.
OSHA cited Chevron for putting off repairs for another year until the pipe failed a fitness for service inspection.
Right, and that's why we cited them for deferred maintenance.
What was their fine? Less than a speeding ticket on the freeway.
Once again, Chevron, no comment. Then 5 years ago, a valve failed, burning an employee. Cal OSHA's inspection found the valve had never been inspected since it was installed, 31 years before.
There's probably 1 million valves, fittings, flanges in this one refinery alone.
The question is, how many other valves are out there, installed decades ago, uninspected and condition unknown? Chevron's comment? No comment. I'm consumer editor Tom Vacar, KTVU Channel 2 News.
In another installment of a KTVU investigation into Chevron refinery inspections, we have information tonight on Cal OSHA's part in the process. KTVU's consumer editor Tom Vacar found out the agency has a limited number of resources to inspect more than 1,000 refineries.
2 years ago, after a deadly fire at a Tesoro refinery up in Washington, Cal OSHA inspected all California refineries, but Cal OSHA regional manager Wendy Carlson said it only looked at their paperwork.
Did we do a walk around? No.
Cal OSHA concluded that California's refineries are some of the safest in the nation. Greg Karras is senior scientist at the nonprofit advocacy group Communities for a Better Environment.
Well, they just took a statistic that was painted by the industry and bought it hook, line, and sinker.
Chevron had no comment. 4 years ago, Cal OSHA inspected and passed with flying colors Chevron Richmond's flare system, a pressure relief system that burns off excess gases to prevent explosions. Chevron still would not comment. Perhaps it had to do with other regulatory agencies.
Now, it might be the criminal investigation that EPA has ongoing alleging that Chevron willfully covered up and failed to monitor its flaring so that it didn't report the violations.
In fact, Cal OSHA's Process Safety Division has a grand total of just 8 inspectors to cover not just the state's 15 refineries, but get this, 1,400 other California plants and factories.
We do the best we can with what we have.
So ultimately, it's up to the refineries to police themselves, much in the same way the California Public Utilities Commission left it up to Pacific Gas and Electric before San Bruno. Not enough inspectors and not enough answers, and you are paying for it. I'm consumer editor Tom Vacar, KTVU Channel 2 News.
New at 6, our consumer editor Tom Vacar live in Richmond with the controversies surrounding the repair work going on there. Tom?
Well, Chevron's doing everything it can to get its refinery back to full capacity. But the question arises, do they have the right permits and are they going to use the right materials? None of the many investigations stemming from the extensive August fire is complete yet, including Chevron's.
We also began our own internal investigation, which is not yet complete.
And that worries the Air Board, other investigating agencies, and community activists.
We've already got evidence that the city has already granted those rubber stamp pipe permits.
They've started demolishing and replacing some pipe. Hopefully after today they will not be replacing any more pipe until the issue gets resolved with the Chemical Safety Board about what type of metal should be used.
Chevron's already made its choice of one type of corrosion-resistant pipe to replace the damaged ones.
That we will not restart the crude unit until the findings and actions from our investigation have been fully communicated.
But another investigator, namely the U.S. Chemical Safety Board, wrote Chevron a letter stating that Chevron's choice over another kind of pipe may not avoid a repeat of the August fire and another one 5 years ago.
Step back and take the time to get some unanimity or consensus among all the regulatory agencies about how this should occur.
And Chevron insists everything else it's checked at the refinery so far is not corroded as the failed pipe.
We have not found a single component yet that is demonstrating the accelerated corrosion.
Richmond City Council will review all of Chevron's current and future permits tomorrow night. Reporting live, consumer editor Tom Vacar, KTVU Channel 2 News.